I'm not determined that this poem's going to rhyme, but like the way I write, my sentence structure will just completely turn in order for it to rhyme.
And the poem has to look right to me on the paper also.
Yeah, it does.
That's part of the structure of it. You have another poem that I very much enjoy. You called it the Jenny poem.
Yeah, well, I was in 6th grade, and I wrote it. Actually, the first time I was on the show, you mentioned that I should write a poem about a child being abused or molested.
Yeah.
At that point, I wasn't sure that I could write something that hadn't happened to me. So I wrote this poem when I was in 6th grade, and I was actually asked if I was molested because it's like a story. I guess I should go ahead and say it then.
Please.
It's the only poem I've ever memorized. Other than that, I don't. All right. Jenny flinched as he touched her arm, but he had convinced her that he'd do her no harm. He had threatened her into fulfilling all of his demands. Now he was taking advantage of her body with his hands. He knew better. He was 23 years old. But he convinced Jenny it would be her fault if she told. He said they wouldn't believe her, and they would think she was a fool. She'd be an outcast at home, and people would ignore her at school. Jenny walked away feeling so ashamed. She was too afraid to tell and feared that she'd be blamed. She tried to go on with her life and put the past behind, but the happenings of that day just wouldn't leave her mind. Well, after 3 months, she had put it all aside, but there was one problem that she just couldn't hide. You see, he had raped Jenny, and Jenny didn't know. Now Jenny's going to be a mom in about 6 months or so. Jenny knew she had to tell, because now she must. But this was a special man to Jenny, someone she thought she could trust. This man who had molested and raped Jenny was her uncle, who she loved more than anyone else. So she really hadn't thought much about staying over his house. Now she is in trouble because she's going to have a kid, and she's not sure if it was wrong what her uncle did. She had always thought that whatever he did was always right. Now she is confused about what had happened that night. When she told her mother just denied. So Jenny, feeling helpless, walked away and cried. Her uncle was right. Her mother did nothing but deny her, and she knew she couldn't tell anyone else because she'd be called a liar. She felt really dumb that she had went and told. She thought it was all her fault, even though she was only 11 years old. Well, her mother was going away for 2 weeks, and at her uncle she would have to stay. She knew she didn't want to go, but she didn't know what to say. So she just told herself it would only be a little while. But when she walked into his house, she could see his mischievous smile. That night he came into her room, all set to attack. But as he laid on top of Jenny, she plunged the knife into his back. He slowly fell to the floor, hitting first his head. And as his eyes closed slowly, she could see her uncle was dead. She felt guilty about what she'd done, but she balled up her fist. Then Jenny took the knife and sliced both her wrists. So if you're ever hurt, telling someone over and over is what I'm definitely recommending, because I'd hate to see happen again this very tragic ending.
That's most beautiful. And you were, what, 11 years old when you wrote this?
6th grade, I think.
6th grade. Whew, that's a powerful emotion for for a 6th grader.
Yeah.
At 11?
I think that's what it was.
Most beautiful. That reminds me of another poem that my brother and I did, a poem called Dear Lord. Also.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that, talks about the same kind of thing. It's such an emotion. And when you think about it, that kind of pain.
Yeah.
And for an 11-year-old child to feel that kind of pain and be able to express it.
That's why they called my mother, actually. After I read the poem in class, I didn't read it to my teacher first. I just got up and read it. And he asked me to stay after class. Then he asked me to go to the guidance office. And they asked me a series of questions, had I ever been touched? But my mother knew that I was able to do that at that point.
Yeah, and she explained it to him.
Yeah, so.
Tiffany, we certainly thank you for coming and sharing with us here today on Color Me Poetry.